Hardly a month goes by without hacking and cyberattacks making it to the daily news headlines. Data is stolen from multinational corporations and published on the internet. Nation-states accuse one another of cyber espionage. And a single ransomware worm suddenly halts the daily business of millions of individuals, businesses, and governments across the globe. News bulletins are not the right place to explain these events in detail, but the unspoken implication behind the lack of clarification is that cyber attacks must be so complicated that only experts have any real hope of grasping how they work. Cybertwists was written on the premise that it is very much possible to explain a cyber attack so that the reader gets a solid idea of what is going on, but without covering the minutiae of what the hacker types into his computer. A relatively high-level approach makes more sense anyway. The precise details of a hack are often only relevant to specific and short-lived technologies or systems, while the underlying principles have an essentially timeless application. On the one hand, Cybertwists contains conceptual descriptions of cyber attacks and the technologies they target. Although the depictions stick to everyday language, they still go into sufficient detail to provide a real understanding of how things work. On the other hand, the narrative covers notable hacking events that have hit the headlines. Although somebody is certainly likely to do a better job of protecting his own systems once he understands how the main types of cyber attack work, the aim of this book is not training in the practice of computer security. Cybertwists is not an instruction manual. It is rather rooted in the tradition of popular science treatises familiar from fields like biology, physics, and astronomy. Focusing as much on hacks that are the preserve of secret services and governments as on crimes committed by private individuals, it seeks to provide an overview of an area of knowledge that is both increasingly relevant to society and inherently interesting. There is something genuinely fascinating about many aspects of hacking theory and practice, especially when they are considered in their political and historical contexts. The book is divided into 5 chapters, each of which views the world of cybersecurity from a different angle. Chapter 1, Secrets, describes the various encryption methods used to obscure information, as well as techniques that have been applied to reveal what other people had tried to hide. Chapter 2, Programs, considers cyber attacks that are based around computer software. It looks both at malware, which is software specifically designed to perform cyber attacks, and at the exploitation of unintended loopholes in existing, legitimate programs. Chapter 3, Identities, explains the various ways in which systems verify who their users are. It examines the limits and weaknesses of available authentication technology and how these can enable attackers to pose as other people. Chapter 4, Messages, starts by describing hacks that are based around the internet communications infrastructure. It then goes on to discuss both the methods that some internet users employ in an attempt to hide their locations and the counter techniques used by law enforcement authorities to unmask those users. It also explains blockchain and Bitcoin. Finally, Chapter 5, Objects, is concerned with the interplay of the cyber world with the concrete world. This encompasses physical hacks that can be carried out on computers in the vicinity, as well as physical damage caused by cyber attacks within the Internet of Things and in the context of cyber war. Cybertwist is available in both Kindle and paperback formats on Amazon.